Okay, y'all, I got a special video for y'all today, and it's one of these theory videos, so it's a what if video. I made some last year, so I'm gonna make one this year, and it's called "What If a D Clan member betrayed Joy Boy." So I did my thing with the One Piece, right? And I found, doing my research that there's 9 D Clan families that are known in One Piece. 9. Let me just name all the members and shit, right? So we have the Davy slash Rocks family. They changed their names to Rocks during, the Blank Century and the Void Century, in order to escape Emu, right? So they wouldn't all die, right? Because the D Clan is, you know, they're all like the same people. Not all the same family necessarily, but they all came together under the Ancient Kingdom. But the Ancient Kingdom was destroyed, as we know, right? So there's Davy D. Jones, the guy who became king of the world, and I'll talk about that in this theory video as well. But we got Davy D. Zebek, or known as Rox D. Zebek, by the world. Then we have the Marshall family, which is also a D clan family. That's Marshall D. Eris, right? That is Blackbeard Teach's mother, right? Marshall D. Teach, that's Blackbeard. But he also could go by Rox D. Teach or Davy D. Teach if he knows his lineage, right? So that's 2 families right there. And then we have Jaguar D. Binks. Now, people believe that Jaguar D. Binks is Joy Boy. I subscribe to that idea as well. Binks' Sake is a song sung by many people, and it's kind of like, all that lore, right? Sun God Nika and all this other stuff. But that one song specifically is about his crew and like the people he had around him, right? You know, time to ship how Brinks his brew. This, the song, right? We got Jaguar D Saw, who's also a part of the same family as Joy Boy. If we know Joy Boy to be Jaguar D Binks, then Jaguar D Saw is a direct descendant of him. Even closer related to Joy Boy by blood than any other D Clan member, and that's the truth. Now we have the Monkey family, which is the 4th family on the list. The Monkey family has members known to be Monkey D. Garp, Marine Vice Admiral, Monkey D. Dragon, the Revolutionary, and Monkey D. Luffy, who's the main character who's going to be King of the Pirates, right? We know about the Straw Hat. And I'm about to talk about the Straw Hat in this theory video as well, too. So hang on, y'all. This is going to get, kind of deep. So we got Nefertari family. Nefertari D. Lily. She was a D Clan member. Then by, association or by family, Cobra D, or Nefertari D Cobra, who was the king of Alabasta during the current timeline of One Piece, right? And then Nefertari D Vivi. I have a theory about that, right? It's all like kind of goes together. Or you can see it different kind of ways after I get through all these. But that's 5 families, right? Yeah, that's 5 families. Then there's Claude D Clover. So the Clow family was also another family under the D clan. Claude D Clover, what did he do? He found the ancient writings and he tried to preserve that for the future generation. He taught Robin how to read poneglyphs, right? That's 7. Or that's 6 actually. Then we got the Trafalgar family. That's Trafalgar D. Waterlaw and all of his family members, right? They died of white lead disease. However, I believe that these faction of the D clan, they kept like medicine, but because it's been a while, they lost that. But even so, they still knew a little bit of medicine. That's why, you know, Trafalgar Law came from a line of doctors because that was what their role was 800 years ago as well. And this is not, confirmed or anything, but this is what I can pick up on because I know how to like read between the lines a little bit. Then we have the Gold family. Who are the members of the Gold family? We got Gold D. Roger, and then we got his son, um, Gold D. Ace. And Gold D. Ace is also a member of the D family. Hey, lady with the backpack, stop. And then Gold D. Ace is also known as Portgas D. Ace. And the Portgas family is another D clan family. That was Portgas D. Rouge, right? She is the mother of Firefist Ace. That's 9 families. Now let me review these, families so we can get to the theory and shit, right? So we got the Davy family that became the Rocks family after going into hiding. We have the Marshall family. We have the Jaguar family. We have the Monkey family. That's 4 family. Then we have the Nefertari family, the Cloud family, the Trafalgar family, the Gold family, and then we have the Portgas family. That's 9 D-Clan members. There could have been more. We don't know, right? We need to get a flashback from Oda, hopefully. We need something, right? So, a long time ago, right? Joy Boy had got into a, war with, what became the world government. And the Celestial Dragon families collaborated with Emu, right, to take down Joy Boy. So like there's 3 ways this shit goes, right? So like there's 3 families of these 9 that I think possibly could have messed with Joy Boy, right? So it was, we got Rox D or Davy D Jones, right? Davy D Jones, right? Davy D Jones was king of the world for a little bit of time, right? So what could have happened was, they never got along. Jaguar D Binks, Joy Boy, and Davy D Jones, because they were supposed to be, leaders, right? But the Destined King happened to be, Joy Boy. People liked him more. However, he still had a faction that followed him, and because they both have that kind of aura to, like, bring people in and have them on their side, right? So Davy D Jones was also, like that, right? He pulled people in and he had enough. But he also didn't side with the ancient, or the what became known as world government. What happened was this, somebody from their faction came to them and said, hey, if you help us out, Davy D Jones, we'll make you king of the world. All you have to do is give us access to these ancient weapons. He told these people who were, the ones who then took over as the world government, like whoever these people were, these 20 kingdoms that came together or whatever, right? Where the ancient weapons were. Because, Joy Boy still trusted Davy D. Jones a little bit because he's a D-Clan member. He had to trust, like, those people. That didn't mean it was the opposite way around and he actually trusted Joy Boy. He didn't. He hated Joy Boy. He wanted to be the king. So, and he would use any means necessary to make that happen. So when that happened, right, Joy Boy was defeated because he gave away 2 locations of the ancient weapons. This is when they started to scramble for the poneglyphs. We'll get to that. But like in this theory, this is like part 1 theory, I guess. But all 3 theories are gonna be posted in this video. Why I think he's the one that is the traitor. Or the reason why people think he's the traitor. He didn't like Joy Boy, but he also wanted to rule the world. Helped the Emu faction, right? After he became the king of the world for a little bit of time, they then dethroned him. He got too comfortable, and then he was dethroned. After that, his family lineage was hunted down to extinction because he was the king of the world, but they wanted to erase that from history. So doing that is, wiping out his bloodline. They then changed their name to Rox, instead of Davy, so that the people would just, forget about them. And it worked for some time. And then Rox D's Beck resurfaced. and then they had to erase that part of history from like the current or more current recent history in One Piece. Now there's another clan member, right? D clan member. We got, the Monkey family. See, when it comes to the Monkey family being in like, betraying Jaguar D Binks, it's not out of like, I hate you. It's out of something like this. I have a son or daughter on the way. And like I said, Davy D. Jones was already against Joy Boy. So like I don't even consider him a traitor, personally, me. He always was in opposition to Joy Boy. You know, he never like outright, attacked Joy Boy or anything, but he would swoop in and take command after his passing and shit. And he was always waiting for that kind of thing to happen. So like the real traitor was the Monkey family. Now this is gonna get deep in a minute though, because these early Monkey D members, right? They had, a child on the way or something, and they wanted to preserve their line, right? So they were approached by, one of the Emu faction members, and none other than a guy named, somebody from the Figarland family before they became royalty and all that. He's like, if you help us out, and give us the ancient weapons, we can, fight against Joy Boy. You tell us where they're at, or they already had the ancient weapons because they worked with, Rocks or Davy D. Jones. So they told him, he was like, if you want to like side with us, you'll be all right. And they did because they wanted to be on the winning side, and they felt bad too. Joy Boy lost. They give the hat to the Gold family. See, the Gold family and the Monkey family are not the same family, but they are of the D clan members. So after that happens, the Gold family takes the hat, and they pass the hat on from generation to generation to generation until it reaches Gold Roger. Gold Roger senses and knows that, it's almost time to, find that shit. However, Gold Roger is a guy who, gets too excited and, he gets ahead of himself. So when Gold Roger finally does, go on the journey and finds the One Piece, right? He is too early to find it. The monkey, remember, I told you the Monkey family betrayed Joy Boy, right? They felt bad. During like the reign of, Davy D. Jones, they were actually helping Davy D. Jones. They were like right by his side because they were like, well, Joy Boy's not here anymore, but we can trust Davy D. Jones because he's a D Clan member. And they did think like that. They were like, it's better than, and then they were fighting against Emu. There was like infighting, but then Emu finally overtook them. They were then hunted down. They then escaped them though. They didn't change their name or anything because they weren't the family that was in charge, But they did go after the Davy clan and try to wipe them out, right? I say all that to say that eventually, Garp was also, there, and he had his relationship with, Gold Roger. Gold Roger, didn't like that or whatever. They defeated Rocksteady's Beck. Who found Shanks? Gold Roger found Shanks. And what did I say? I said the Figarland family ancestor was in cahoots with Emu and also, helped out, the Davy clan to become the king of the world, but that was only temporary so that they could get, you know, them pacified so they can then take over after that and then try to wipe them out. But that never happened, right? Because this needed to happen 800 years later. So Gold Roger gave the hat to Shanks, who's the Figarland. But remember, we told you that the Figarland convinced the Monkey family to betray, Joy Boy. But this Figarland is the child of destiny. We know Shanks to be the child of destiny, right? Because instead of being like those celestial dragons, he became like a pirate, much like Gold Roger. He carried the hat. And during this time, this hat's been carried around. This hat, carries, energy, residual hockey, and all kind of stuff, man. It's like a physical embodiment of the will of the D clan, and that's why, Joy Boy was like, pass this hat on. And he told the early gold members to do that. Gold Roger held onto it, gave it to Shanks. Shanks was just a middleman, but the right middleman because, like I said, the Figureland family, tried to, come in there and have them betray each other, break the D clan apart. But now he was sending the hat to Luffy. Now he wasn't trying to. Remember, he had Ace. That's who Gold Roger thought was gonna do it. Okay, my son will do it then. But upon closer inspection, Luffy met like the aura that Roger had, right? That I'm gonna be a pirate. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. He ate the devil fruit. After Shanks, was moved by Luffy, he was like, damn, this kid, he's got something about him. He so Luffy ate the devil fruit that was given to him by Joy Boy. Or not by Joy Boy, but like it has his will in it, and the devil fruit found him by, destiny, right? That, and then he has the hat too, that Gold Roger had. And what did I say about the Gold family? They kept the hat for so long, right? But all of that was also what, Joy Boy had. Joy Boy had the Sun God Nikaido fruit, and he had the straw hat, both. His own, though, right? And, because he betrayed, or the early Monkey family, right, back in the 800 years ago, betrayed Joy Boy, it's like a full atonement, like it comes back around, and Luffy's the one to, like, find the One Piece and basically save the world from, like, Emu and that corruption that is there, right? And and in doing that, right, he finds One Piece, and he's like, we're here, we never wanted to do that to you. We never wanted to betray you. But that's what, we did back then. And nobody knows this shit, right? But this is like the underlying reason why everything happened. And this is the reason why everything happened. So that's why it happened, right? And that's why Luffy's, the guy he is, and all that. It's Luffy's goal to, go after the One Piece and do all this. It's just more emphasis on Luffy being the guy. And it makes sense because in these shonens, these MCs have like all kind of shit that make him the MC. It's not just, oh, he has a power. It's, more than that, history behind it and all that. You know, it's like atonement for the Monkey family. They betrayed them 800 years ago. But now, Luffy, a Monkey D clan member, is going to Joy Boy and saying, hey, I'm not you, but I do understand what you mean. You want freedom. We thought we were going to have freedom, but we didn't. We kind of, messed things up, but he was the one to fix it. And like Luffy knows nothing about this, right? We know who Luffy is. And Luffy always says, right? What does Luffy always say? Even when he's in Gear 5, they're like, Sun God Nika and Joy Boy. And he's like, no, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I'm not saying Luffy knows any of this shit. He don't know none of this shit. But Gold Roger knew about some of that shit. Some of it, not all of it. Now the other person who betrayed, Joy Boy is possibly the Nefertari family. That's the third family I had on the list. So this happened, right? So if it wasn't the Monkey family, right? We get the time when, the ancient weapons were used somehow, probably because of David D. Jones. The, Emu faction got a hold of like two ancient weapons, and then they couldn't, counter it. And that shit fell apart, right? The Gold family still passes on the hat and other things. These other D-clan members are actually, writing shit down on poneglyphs, and she's sending them through the four corners of the world. She is invited to the world government after, Davy D. Jones is, dethroned or whatever, right? She goes up there. She never comes back. And why does she never come back? Because Emu possesses her body. Because Emu's an entity that needs to hop from body to body every so often. Possesses, Lily's body, then has the audacity to ask the next people in line to be like, hey, do you want to see that, on the red line? And do you want to, be a part of, what we got going on, the world government? And they declined. They said, no, we'll stay in Alabasta and we'll watch over, our people here. We don't want a seat at the, table. They did that because, they didn't know what happened to Vivi, or Lily, my bad. They didn't know what happened to Lily. But what happened was Emu took over her body. And then she's seeing Vivi, right, in the current day, and she has her picture and Luffy's picture and Blackbeard's picture. She's looking to take Vivi's body as a host because she just, or, Emu found out that type of person is a person that can, keep her sustained for another like 100,000 years or whatever. Not 100,000, but you know what I mean. So those are the possible, traitors amongst the D clan. It's either just Davy D. Jones doing his thing, which is a high likelihood, but it could also be, the Monkey family, and that, Davy D. Jones was never with Joy Boy. They were always in opposition. However, Davy D. Jones and Joy Boy knew that they weren't supposed to do that. It would just be a bad taste in like the mouths of the D clan, right? I hate that guy, but I'm not gonna kill him. When he falls, I'll take the power. That kind of thing. So he wasn't ever with Joy Boy, if you ask me, because he wanted to rule the way he wanted to. The Monkey family was with Joy Boy, but out of, survival or whatever they thought that they were going to lose, they wanted to, preserve the Monkey family going forward. So they decided to team up with, Davy D. Jones and take down Joy Boy, or just sit out of it and then, come in and be, part of that for a little bit. And then after a while, Emu did take them over, and they were hunted down almost to extinction, but not really. Because remember, we have all these characters that are still around, right? And then I said the third possible betrayal could have been from the Nefertari line, and it's because Lily. It ain't because they wanted to. It's because she didn't know that she was gonna get possessed by Emu, and then that happened, right? The world government was created, and all of this is going on, and it's a possessed, Nefertari D Lily doing this shit the whole time, but it's Emu, this entity. I don't think Emu's a fucking person. It's just some demon. That's just what I think. Some shit that is not human at all. But we don't know yet, right? Some people think it is a person, but I don't. I think it's just a thing that possesses people and keeps on, prolonging its life by hopping from body to body. That isn't out of the realm of possibility. But those are the three, members of the D clan. The Marshall family, the Jaguar family, they wouldn't have done it. Um, the Cloud family, the Trafalgar family wouldn't have done it. The Gold and Portgas family also wouldn't have betrayed Joy Boy. Those are the only three families that I think would have done it. But anyways, tell me what you think about this theory in the comments. And be cool on the corner, because I have some more videos to make.